Our scripture passage for this morning is one of my favorites. I especially love what it has to teach us about thankfulness. I think that the lessons in this passage about love and mercy and gratitude, I think they're particularly important for us to remember right before Thanksgiving and as we head into the Christmas season. The story opens with Jesus entering a village and being approached by a group of people. On the way to Jerusalem, Jesus was going through the region between Samaria and Galilee. As he entered a village, 10 lepers approached him, keeping their distance. They called out, saying, "Jesus, Master, have mercy on us." At Jesus' time, lepers were complete social outcasts. They had to live outside the bounds of town and were not allowed inside of cities. They were generally feared and hated. Nobody understood how people became afflicted with this illness, and people feared that if the lepers were anywhere near their community, they would also be afflicted. This group of 10 ill people that approached Jesus, they were taking a huge risk. We can sense their desperation as they call out to Jesus for mercy. We can imagine that they have heard that Jesus heals people. We can imagine that they've also heard that Jesus cares for social outcasts. Jesus cares about people that have otherwise been discarded by society. And of course, they were right. Jesus does show mercy. When he saw them, he said to them, "Go and show yourselves to the priests." And they went, and they were made clean. Now, one of the things that I find really interesting about this story is that it is not Jesus who does the healing. This is very unusual for a healing parable, that Jesus is not the one who actually heals the lepers. In my mind, the real miracle of this story is that Jesus changes the hearts and minds of the priests. That's the miracle. The village priests did not heal the lepers. Perhaps it was because they couldn't do so, but perhaps they didn't want to. Before Jesus came, perhaps the priests had no interest in interacting with these people who were ill. I think they probably were fearful, like everyone else in the village. They simply didn't want them within the boundaries of the town. So the miracle that Jesus performs in this story is that he supplants fear with compassion. Jesus turns the priests' hatred into love. He turns their apathy into mercy. Before, the lepers would have been chased from the town. They would have been met with closed doors. After the miracle, they're met with open doors and open hearts. I think this is a beautiful miracle. I also like to think that it makes a lasting difference, that there is a lasting change. Jesus could have simply healed the 10 people who came to him, but instead, by changing the minds of the priests, by having the priests do the healing, he creates a lasting change within this community. Now we get to the part of the story about thankfulness. Then one of them, when he saw that he was healed, he turned back, praising God with a loud voice. He prostrated himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him. And he was a Samaritan. And then Jesus asked, "Were not 10 made clean? But the other 9, where are they? Was none of them found to return and give praise to God except for this foreigner?" And then he said to the man, "Get up and go on your way. Your faith has made you well." I think the last part of this passage is teaching us two things. The first thing is that all of the lepers were made clean. It didn't matter whether or not they were worthy, and it didn't matter whether or not they showed appropriate gratitude. It didn't matter what kind of people they were. They were equally showered with God's love. They all received healing. They all received mercy. God's love is extended to all people, regardless of whether or not it is deserved. All 10 were made clean. The second thing that this passage has to teach us is that thankfulness can bear spiritual fruits. All 10 of the lepers were made clean, but Jesus tells the Samaritan that his thankfulness, his faithfulness, has made him well. They were all made clean, but the Samaritan's gratefulness makes him well. And this is two different words in Greek. Well and clean, they mean different things. The well does not just refer to healing, it refers to wholeness, happiness. It's a much more holistic term. It doesn't just refer to your physical body and your physical well-being. So thankfulness, giving thanks to God, is a powerful spiritual practice. It's a practice that can help us draw closer to God. It's a practice that can help heal our hearts, help us love more, help us to love more deeply. Thankfulness can make us well. Now, Thanksgiving, the holiday, for all of its difficult history in this country, it can be a time that we set aside to care for one another and to also practice thankfulness. I think that sometimes the holiday season can become crowded with traditions and especially around food and gift giving. It can get crowded with a lot of noise. I don't know about all of you, but I'm already tired of Christmas commercials, and it's not even Thanksgiving yet. There's a lot of noise around the holiday season. But this passage is reminding us that although these things can be fine, it's good to have traditions with your family. That the real heart of this season is thankfulness, is gratitude. It also is what we learn in the Gospels. The focus of the holiday should be on what the Gospels teach us about being merciful and being kind, about loving our neighbors, about caring for the hungry and the sick, caring for those who are forgotten or discarded. This is the real message of the holiday season, and I think it's one that I need to be reminded of. We are to love those who are rejected by society, perhaps even those who we fear. We should also tend to our spiritual well-being. We should practice gratitude. We should practice thankfulness. We are taught in this passage that both are important, both outward acts of love and also inward acts, spiritual acts. Both are important, both the outward and the inward. I think the good news of this passage is loud and clear. Acts of mercy and love are sacred acts. Acts of mercy and love are sacred. And acts of thankfulness and praise, these things can make us well. They can bring us wholeness. Friends, I would invite you to pray with me this morning during our silent, open worship time on this passage. And if you feel called to speak and give ministry from the silence, I would encourage you to stand and speak.